Okay, so I wanted to introduce arrays, the concept of arrays. The concept of arrays exists in all programming languages. It's just a way to store a list of values which can be only of one type. So you can make a list of strings or integers or decimal numbers. It's up to you. You can really store anything you want in an array. The elements can be accessed by their index numbers, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. Arrays are really objects in Java, so they are created a little differently than some other data types. They're kind of created like you would create a scanner or a random object. So let's take a look here. So you might visualize it as a bunch of boxes that are filled up with values. So when you make an array, you have to state its size, and its size can't be changed once you make it. So in this case, I've made an array of four, well, it's filled with four values, but it's actually of size 5 because you can see here's the fifth box, but it's empty right now. So these elements are strings in this case. I could put double quotes around them, but these strings can be stored in the boxes of the array, and the way you access them is by their index numbers. So you could say that the first, it would make sense to call this index 1, but of course not. Programmers love to start counting from 0 because it's a valid number and you don't want to waste numbers. So let's start with index 0 for the first thing, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. This is a bit tricky at first and you got to get used to it, but yeah, once you get used to counting starting from 0, it's no problem. So these values, they can be replaced, they can be called back at any time. So we will show you, I'll show you shortly how you would set these values, but let's take another scenario. These are strings, like we said, and we could have an array that stores integers as well. So here's another example where I'm drawing these, going horizontally across, but of course, this is just a visualization. For humans, a computer doesn't actually store things like this at all, but it's convenient for us to look at it this way. So let's make this integer array store the marks for these people. So Bob has a 75, Sam has an 83, Joe has a 91, and Rob has a 67. So these are what we would call related arrays, and that's kind of handy. If you access element 0 of the names array, it's Bob, and element 0 of the numbers array, the marks array, that would be Bob's mark, so the 0 person's mark. And here at index 1 is Sam and Sam's corresponding mark. So as long as you keep them using the same index for the same person or element, then that's quite helpful. So another thing, when you first make an array, if you don't set all the values, if the array contains something like strings, which are objects themselves, then the default value is null. So it's not actually the string null in quotes, it's the keyword in Java null, which means empty. For arrays of integers, they get initialized to 0 by default. And if it was double, it'll be 0.0. So this concept is a little bit familiar maybe because we just talked about strings, and strings really are an array of chars. So if we have the word Java, then we can think about that as being an array where each element in the array is a char. I'll put it in single quotes because chars are all in single quotes, right? So this is element 0 here. So this is element 0, this is element 1, element 2, element 3. So just show you that there. So that's how arrays work. You can store, like I said, any type of value in there at all. It's up to you. And that's how they're related to each other. I'll show you how to construct an array, and then we'll look at some code examples after. So to make an array, I said before they are objects, and that they are of a particular size when they begin. So if you want to make your array of strings, normally when you make a string variable, you say string name. If I want to make a list of those, what I do is I just say square bracket after string. So those are square brackets. And I'm going to just call it names, plural. So there's a space there. So the data type is string, and it's an array of strings, and the name is names. And then I can say equals. I have to say the keyword new. This is how we use the keyword new when we're making a new object, such as a scanner. And then we just state the data type again. It's string, and use square brackets here. And I'm going to say I've got 4 people, 4 names to store, and that's how I make my string. Then if I want to set values, I can just say names, square bracket 0 equals Bob. So that's how I would set the array first element to Bob. And yeah, if you want to print that, you would just say system.out.println, just using sysout for short, name square bracket 0, and that would actually print Bob. And then you could say something like has a mark of, and then we could join on from the marks array. Let's say I made a marks array earlier of type integer. So I would say int square bracket marks equals new. Int is the data type, and square brackets the size. I'll match it to this and make it 4. And let's say I filled them up at some point, so I could say Bob has a mark of, and then I could print from the marks array element 0, which is Bob's corresponding mark. So if I have one array called marks, we have 83, and I have 4 elements. Those elements would be labeled index 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then I would have a names array. And so far I've only set Bob. And Bob is in element 0. He's in box number 0. So when I say names 0, I'm really pointing to Bob. And when I say mark 0, I'm really pointing to Bob's mark of 83. Sorry about that. I didn't realize you couldn't see that. Okay, so that's a good introduction just of the concept, and we'll show how to make this happen in code next.